Tell us a little bit about some of these other photos we have here. Here, this group of 6 women, Chris or Carlo. If you read his caption, he says, with the exception of one, all of these women are Visayans, Spanish, mestizas. With the exception of one woman, he's saying, you know, they're all Spanish blood. And he uses special terms about racial mixtures. What's going on?
Well, I think very early on, Worcester, as a writer and a colonial official, and then also the photographers involved with this project, used the camera to try to understand the ethnic diversity within the Philippines itself. This is a society that ethnically and culturally doesn't resemble the United States. They bring concepts of race and ethnicity from the turn of the century United States and impose them on another society. So in the Philippines, where there is sort of more a sort of mixing of Spanish colonial officials and families with Filipinos, and sort of ethnic mixings of all different kinds, to Americans who are living through segregation and Jim Crow, that cultural and racial mixing is seen as problematic. Worcester uses the camera and uses these photographs to kind of make sense of that world. But he is both seeing a world that's different and also using his own sort of visual skills to try to make sense of that.
Yeah, but the mestizo category is also a category that comes from the Spanish colonial period. So the Spanish classified people as well of the Philippines based on racial categories. So there were mestizos that were Philippine Spanish, mestizos that were Philippine Arab, mestizos that were Philippine Chinese. That mestizo category was done away with in 1898 in this brief period of Philippine independence, but remained in the vernacular, I think, of Filipinos as well as the Americans who took it on.
What you say is really interesting because you mentioned Spanish, of course, you mentioned the Germans come up, you mentioned Arab mixes, as we see in the next photograph. Very rare Worcester photographs, there's Chinese. So there's a population there that is very mixed.
This photograph is actually categorized by Worcester under the category of transportation. So it's not a category of peoples, it's a category of technologies.
You know, here's an interesting image from the collection, and it's, again, fairly rare. It's an actress. She's obviously Western dress, but she's not in Manila. So what this suggests is the spread of this Europeanized culture outside of Manila into other areas. But once again, we don't find many such images in the collection, to my knowledge. So it's quite interesting what this huge collection, what we don't see, what he chose not to focus on.
Do you recall how many images we had in this unit? What is the approximate size that you have of?
About 4,700 glass negatives. And there are a lot of negatives that aren't featured here, where he also was taking pictures of volcanoes. He was quite interested in volcanoes and birds and plants and animals, which don't appear here. And he occasionally purchased photos as well, so it's an interesting assemblage of images.